What is up, friends, YouTube and motorcycle enthusiasts? Accelerate coming at you with a second video in my riding fitness series. This is part 2, strength. So part 1, if you remember, essentially was why, right? So why did I want to do this fitness series? Why do I find fitness to be an important part of not only my life but also my riding and improvement and all that stuff? So I wanted to kick off the next one with strength, multiple videos coming in the future, but I thought strength was a really good one, mostly because strength I think is frequently overlooked for riding. So first disclaimer, first and foremost, I'm not a exercise, physiologist. I'm not a degree holder. I'm not a personal trainer. I don't train people or anything like that. I'm just, again, as I've said before, I'm just a guy that fitness has been a part of my life throughout, pretty much since my early 20s up to now, which I'm the great age of 40. So, and it's going to continue to be my life until I expire from this earth. So, again, up front, what I'm going to say, my advice is what's worked for me and what I found to be useful for myself. And I highly encourage people to do, their own research and take everything in, because there's so much surrounding the fitness community as a whole, not just obviously for riding, which there's predominantly very little. But also, the weight loss pills and so on and so forth, and the get ripped in 30 days programs and all this other stuff. So I want to talk about strength, but I wanted to give that disclaimer. So next, I'm going to define strength, which I really talked about previously, which is, why does strength make you better? Strength is your ability or for your body or muscles' ability to perform an action with endurance or heft over time. That's pretty much what strength is. The stronger your muscles are, the better they will be at doing that. Whether it's lifting your bike up out of a ditch, or whether it's just you literally standing up hundreds of times, thousands of times in a row, which frankly, if you study some of the movements of that our bodies make as we ride dirt bikes in different scenarios, that's kind of what's happening. So I'll get into that here in a little bit. So why does it make you better? Well, as I've said before, number one really is endurance. The stronger you are, the better you're going to be at efficiently repeating the same motions over and over with accuracy. So strength gives us the ability to literally continue to doing that. And some people really maybe don't think it's as important as what it really is, but I assure you, as you get stronger, everything in life is easier. It's going to give us that endurance, the ability to do things over and over without tiring. So endurance really is number one. Number two, for riding is, a lot of people think of strength, they think of, spending hours and hours in the gym, bulking up, getting really, they think that we're talking about putting on pounds and pounds of muscle and, looking like a meathead in the gym. That's simply just not the case. You can get exponentially stronger and really not gain any size. You may gain a little bit, but mostly what can happen as we train for strength is we're connecting those neural pathways. So the neural pathway connection is really number two and why it will make you better. So what that means is not only are we training our muscles, but we're training our nervous system's ability to recruit muscle on demand. So if you look at people that perform very complex movements with their body, for example, a gymnast. Gymnasts are overall pretty muscular, but they're also very lean. and they're not what we would see of somebody on the cover of a bodybuilding magazine or something like that. They're lean and muscular, but a lot of their strength comes from that ability to recruit that muscle, and that their neurological system is extremely trained, because over time they've developed all of that strength, and their body really does work together. That same principle will work for you with any physical activity that you do. That includes riding a dirt bike. Whether it's hard enduro, motocross, doesn't matter. The techniques that you're performing, your body positioning, your explosion, your manipulation of the machine under you, you shifting your body weight, whatever that is, the stronger you are, the more coordinated you will become through that neural pathway training. So number 3 is really kind of a weird one, but it's protection. The more muscle that we have on our skeletal structure, the more, in a sense, the more protection we have. So not only physical protection, so as you carry muscle, you do carry somewhat of a skeletal armor. The stronger our muscles are and ligaments are, if we fall and twist and turn a certain way, through strength training and predominantly anaerobic weight training, our ligaments, our joints, everything grows and does become stronger. So the chance of injury is less through that protective ability. Another really important part is our bone density. This has been scientifically proven over and over again that weight training and weight training and anaerobic exercise essentially increases our bone density so much that astronauts have to strength train with heavy weight in space, or they lose not only muscle but also bone density. As much as 10% of bone density over a 100-day period at the space station. So, the science is there. We know that we have to maintain a certain bone density as we operate in this physical world. Well, as we're doing action sports like riding motorbikes, I don't know about you guys, but a broken arm, wrist, or collarbone, or leg, or ankle, putting me out of half a season or entire season is a super bummer. And if I knew that some things that I was doing in the gym could possibly prevent that from happening, especially as I age, that's a huge gain for me. So those are the 3 reasons, in my opinion, of why we should train. So endurance is going to increase, our neural pathways and ultimately coordination will increase, and then also protection. So let's move into flexibility and mobility. I want to talk about that first and foremost. I am going to do an entire different video on flexibility and mobility, and why I do believe that flexibility and mobility deserves its own individual regiment in our physical training. But I just want to put a star beside of it and say that it is my opinion, through my own personal fitness journey, as well as a lot of the information that I've gathered over the years, that the foundation of strength is flexibility and mobility. It is absolutely critical that we work on our muscular mobility as well as flexibility in our joints and things like that. We know that we're doing this action sport of riding dirt bikes. The more flexible you are, the better. And there's tons of other benefits, but I want to caveat that if you're not stretching and working on your mobility, you're doing yourself a disservice, and I do believe that injury ultimately can be prevented, a large portion of it. Okay, now we're going to move into the exercises that I perform or that I recommend, and ultimately the body parts that are associated with those exercises. So whenever we look at riding, it's immediately apparent as a whole that it is a full body workout. It's a full body engagement of the muscular structure of our physique. So whenever we examine the muscles that are used in this technique, there are some that are more focused than others, but overall it's really a full body. So what we're really talking about is 4 essential breakdown movements that it takes for our body. That's a hip hinge, which is kind of associated where the hips come out, something you would think of with a deadlift. And the reason why I say that is the hip hinge is very predominant because of, if we look at how we set at the attack position, how those hips come out and we're in the ready position, the legs are bent. And also if you would look at maybe a rider going over whoops or attacking an off-road section where the bike's manipulating under them, those hips are constantly modulating back and forward. So a hip hinge is a really large part of it. Also a hip press, also what we would kind of associate with as a squat. Obviously legs are huge for riding off-road. Leg strength becomes very, very apparent that we need a lot of leg strength because we do a lot of riding with our legs, with the manipulation of the bike under us, weighting the pegs, and just holding our body up and moving back and forth on the bike. So much movement involved. Next we have, for the upper body, we have a push and a pull. So essentially a push, think of, pushing the bike away from you, and then a pull would be pulling the bars back. So that upper body push and pull, similar to a push-up or a bent over row. Those are kind of the overall 4 movements that we have when we ride. So obviously that's engaging pretty much everything: legs, back, shoulders, arms, core, chest, and neck. So that's a lot of body parts to work through. So what I'm going to kind of do is just focus on exercises that for each body part that are kind of a staple in my regimen. I obviously like to mix it up. I'll get into frequency and what I actually do here in just a minute, but I'll just give some examples of these 4 areas: the hip hinge, the hip press, the upper body push, and the upper body pull. Exercises that can be associated with this and you guys have heard these, but it's worth saying. So starting off, we'll mention with legs. There's really no, for the quad specifically, there's really no other exercise that even comes close than the squat. A lot of people don't like to squat just because it is a compound movement. It is very form-based. But when you learn to squat properly, a squat is a huge leg strength builder. Predominantly the quads, especially if you do like a front squat or a goblet squat or something like that. I've become accustomed to kettlebell squats, which is it's just a variable of a front squat because it does focus on my quads, and then I use other exercises for other parts of my legs. But the squat is a staple of leg strength and one of those exercises that I think that we absolutely should be doing to get stronger. Next, for that hip hinge movement, the deadlift, guys. The deadlift is a huge, again, another compound, another one of those staples to where your deadlift, getting stronger at deadlifting will make everything, all those support muscles, so much stronger. And it's just one of those things that if everybody's a little bit afraid of deadlift because of the lower back issues and things like that, but I'll talk about that more once we just get to these exercises here. So for back, the back being associated with that part of that hip hinge, hip press type stuff, is the kettlebell swing is another really good hip hinge. Even it kind of aligns with deadlift, but I mean the kettlebell swing has become a staple in my routine, and I really like it. So I think it's one of those ones that's really good. So for the back, both the upper and lower back of that pulling motion, the bent over row, whether with dumbbells or barbells, and the pull up, both of which can be done with virtually no equipment. So they're kind of staples as well. Moving on to shoulders, the shoulders is one of those things that a lot of people overlook, but shoulder health, I think, is extremely important. We're not doing bodybuilding here, and I've moved away from very complex shoulder routines that I've done in the past. I think a shoulder press, literally just pressing up, a shoulder raise, which is kind of like a side raise out with weight, and then a bent over raise, which really focuses on the rear part of our shoulder. And I do make sure that I do that rear raise a couple times a month with my regimen at least, because the supporting the rear deltoid, we get very used to pushing and developing like shoulder presses, the medial and front portion of our deltoid. And as you can tell, most people that have rotator cuff issues usually have a underdeveloped rear delt to help support the overall shoulder. So these shoulder injuries are also common in dirt biking. So I think it's worth noting all of them. Next we have for arms. I really don't do any bicep. I may do some bicep curls periodically, but not much. Biceps are really going to be engaged about as much as they need to during our other pulling type exercises. So, biceps are kind of guns type, looking good exercise, but I don't really spend a lot of time on them these days. They get enough work with the pulling. However, triceps, I do definitely do both dips, which is a fantastic compound movement, as well as just diamond push-ups. Whenever I do chest routine, my triceps get work, but I think the triceps definitely get a little bit more work. And I noticed it whenever I was doing that Keros hard enduro there in that SEER, that going down all those downhills, holding my weight back on the bars, my triceps did become to get fatigued, and my triceps are pretty strong. So definitely worth implementing it in the routine. Next we have core. Core is straightforward, all the important ones. Crunches, legs raises, and the Mason twist. I think those are really three really good ones that hit all the major parts of your core. Not sit-ups. I'm a huge fan of crunches. The leg raises get the lower delt, the crunches the upper, and then the Mason twists are hitting those the side, the side of our abs as well. So, which is good support overall for core strength. For chest, push-ups. You can do bench. You don't really need to bench 300 pounds to ride a dirt bike, but just having overall chest strength is good. We do push away and pull and then push again in that movement. So I think push-ups are a great upper body builder, and I don't really do any. I do different variations of like spider push-ups, and there's all kinds of stuff out there that you can kind of look at, but just regular push-ups is what I do. And finally, for our grip strength and our neck, which is really our trapezius muscles that run up to our neck. Obviously, all that gets worked with holding onto the bike, as well as holding the weight of our helmet, looking up, and all that stuff as we're in different positions. I'm a huge proponent of the farmer's carry. Just using kettlebells or dumbbells, farmer's carry, shrugs, and then for grip strength, if you're doing the farmer's carry, it works our squeezing. Pretty much every kind of pulling exercise works our grip if you're holding on, whether it's pull-ups or a bent over row or farmer's carry. But I think one thing that does get overlooked is the spreading muscles of our hands, which you guys may have seen some of these things advertised, or it's like a grip spreader. It like attached to your fingers and you open your hand up. I think that's very important, and I actually suffer from carpal tunnel, and that grip spreader has really helped develop often underdeveloped muscles throughout our forearms and our hands, because we're so grip dominant that we can develop, because of that imbalance, we can develop issues in our muscles and stuff, and in our ligaments and joints from that imbalance. So I'm a huge proponent of those grip spreaders where you open your fingers up to help counteract that. So that's pretty much exercise breakdown. Again, nothing super elaborate. This is just kind of stuff that I've done over time. And if you look at these major muscle groups and you want to mix things up, that's absolutely awesome. I think doing the same thing over and over with most strength routines. It's good to mix in new things as you keep things fresh and kind of get if you notice imbalances or you think that you want to try different exercises for different body parts, then yeah, that's awesome. I absolutely encourage it. But what I listed is pretty much are the staples for my routine. So next, let's look at frequency. Frequency is really going to depend on your goals and your personal gaps. So for me, I think that starting off, a lot of people, I really think 2 to 3 times a week for strength training is a good place to start. If you can only, do it once a week, it is what it is. It's like anything else. Just like we struggle to find time to ride the bike or whatever the case may be. But for me with frequency, because I do have a gym close to where I work and I have the ability to cut my lunchtime short, I actually work out at lunch. So frequency for me is less of an issue. But I think with every person needs to examine their own goals and gaps. And what I mean by that is, everybody's different. Everybody's physiology is different. Everybody is starting from a different place. If you're relatively strong and you really just need maintenance and some imbalance development, yeah, I mean, twice a week should be no problem. But if you're predominantly a runner, you have excellent cardio, but you struggle with the weight of the bike and you just really are lacking a lot of strength, I would say move into that 3 to 4 times per week and getting in a good strength regimen to help build that up. And it is very, very individual. Now we'll talk about my protocol, so what I do, and I kind of mentioned it a little bit. So currently I'm only weight training 2 days per week. And then I do 3 days per week of cardio. So a 5-day work week, I will do 2 of those days will be weight training and 3 days cardio. And the reason why I've done that is because my strength overall is a superior skill to my cardiovascular strength. I'm going to do a separate video on cardio and why I think that's so important. But again, I assessed myself and I said, these are my gaps. I'm more than strong enough in most areas, and my workouts, even only doing 2 days a week, have really developed some small gaps and some imbalances that I identified. For example, my hamstrings have always been a little lacking from my quads. So as my 2 days per week, as I'm working on that, I started leaning more towards those hip hinge type movements to help develop my hamstring strength and lower back. As many of you know, I've had lower back issues. So identifying those problems and then coming back around and fixing them in just 2 days per week, it's worked out great. So I also do a full body Tabata. If you guys don't know what Tabatas are, I downloaded a free app on my phone. It's literally just 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. So I don't really have any sets per se. I literally just do the exercise for 20 seconds. I rest for 10 and then I do it again. I do that for 8 rounds. And then I move on to the next exercise. And I do that in a full body workout. So full body routine twice a week. It usually takes me 45 minutes or so to get through those body parts that I mentioned. I keep the intensity high and I get after it. I like to mix up my exercises. If I'm one day I may do a shoulder press. The other day in my routine I may do a shoulder a raise or a rear delt or crunches or a different Mason twist or a hanging leg raise or whatever the case may be. I keep things fresh, but it's always hitting those same key body parts in different ways, and I'm always keeping my intensity very high. So I also like to focus on compound movements. Compound movements engage, they engage more the muscle fibers. They focus more on strength. Isolation stuff focuses more on hypertrophy and size. So yeah, That's pretty much my routine as a whole. Alright guys, the last thing I'm going to talk about is getting it done. And what I mean by that is really, in a sense, not making excuses for your strength training. So a lot of this comes down to timing, availability, and what we have as tools at our disposal. So first and foremost, a lot of people don't have a gym close to them, and as I've kind of mentioned before, you don't really need complex workout equipment or anything like that to do a lot of these exercises. A lot of people will opt for home gyms or garage gyms and very minimal equipment. Most of the stuff I've listed can be done with adjustable dumbbells, or just a couple of different varying dumbbells, kettlebells, a pull-up bar, and body weight type exercises. Like I mentioned before, if you keep the intensity high, you will get smoked. You don't need a lot of weight. If you have a gym at your disposal, that's fantastic. I highly recommend utilizing that. The next thing is, a lot of people talk about, well, if I have the choice between strength training or riding the bike, what should I do? And honestly, for me, I don't have the ability to ride my bike a lot through the week. So because I am able to strength train during my lunch through the week and do my cardio and things like that, I don't have the ability to ride my bike. I don't work from home. If I did work from home, I would probably ride my bike a lot more, or ride my trials bike during that lunch period. That would be a lot more useful for me. So I would say it's very individual, but a lot of times we don't have access to our bike and the gear and the ability. It's much more time consuming to hop on our bike to ride. So sometimes getting a good workout in and doing that strength training allows us to physically condition ourselves, but yet still prepare ourselves for that riding aspect. Alright guys, this pretty much wraps it up for me. I hope this information has been informative and is somewhat helpful for anybody out there. As I mentioned before, I really do find benefits to strength training, and I do see that even all the way up from motocross to hard enduro, off-road, the top level guys, I guarantee you, they're not just hunched over a road bike 4 or 5 hours a day for their training. They're in the gym. They are lifting weights at some capacity. So I encourage you guys to get out there and do the same thing. All right. So I hope you guys have a fantastic week. And get out there. Hope it's sunny wherever you're at. It's not too hot. And drink lots of water. Get some electrolytes. Ride a dirt bike. This is Accelerate once again. Signing off.